Welcome to another episode of the Business Spotlight. I am joined today by our guest, Kirk Kern. He is with Hyperlocal Media Nevada. Kirk, thank you for taking the time. We know that time is valuable in the business owner world. I'm excited to learn more about yourself, your business and your journey through business. So, Kirk, without further ado, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Kirk Kern, and I've been in newspaper publishing for a number of years, probably like from the late 1980s when I graduated from college. I worked for the Las Vegas Review-Journal for 10 years. I left there. I worked for Greenspun Media Group for a couple of years doing a business weekly. And then after that, I kind of went out on my own for a long time. Kind of worked with another guy to start a magazine, a magazine in Summerlin, which was hugely successful. And it got sold to Gannett, which is obviously the biggest publisher in the U.S. Moved to Phoenix for 7 years, where I started about 24 different magazines for Gannett. I left there and started my own magazine in Gilbert, Arizona, and I did that for about 3 or 4 years. It was very successful, but then the economy just went really bad. I think what was that, like 2008, 2009,
right?
And that my publication was kind of a high-end lifestyle magazine, and most of my business kind of went away. So I kind of resurfaced back in Vegas, working for another company that was kind of a startup company that we purchased. 4 rural Nevada newspapers. So I ran that company for some other people, and we built that up to 6 newspapers that we acquired over the course of a couple of years, and I ran that until from 2011 until 2020. March of 2020, I'm sure everybody knows what happened then. They shut down some of the papers, so my job kind of went away. Which actually it turned out to be a pretty good deal for me. It kind of got me out from being an employee anymore, and forced me into the entrepreneurship that I wanted to do all in the long run anyway. So what happened was, one of the newspapers we had in Battleborn Media, which was my old company, they had shut down. It was a weekly newspaper in Mesquite. And Mesquite is, as most people, or maybe are aware, but most people should be aware, it's a fairly affluent retirement community in Nevada, and it's very, had a lot of growth there. So when you have a retirement community, you have people that really kind of want to read a print newspaper.
Yeah.
So I started getting a lot of calls from people saying, "Hey, what happened to the paper? Is it coming back?" I was gone. The staff was gone because they had shut it. The other ownership had shut it down. And so I decided to go off on my own and do my own newspaper there, which is right here, called Mesquite Monthly. I started that in August of 2020. Still right in the heart of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go recapture a lot of the advertisers that were in our other paper, but I decided to do it as a monthly publication instead of a weekly, mostly because I don't live in Mesquite, and so I can't really be there all the time to support a weekly newspaper. So I started a monthly. It's gone real well. It made money from day one. So, and it grew pretty substantially through the first 6 months or so, and has either grown or maintained where I've been ever since. So that's me up until now. Now, the other thing is, my company is Hyperlocal Media Nevada, which means I don't want to just do one newspaper in Mesquite.
Right.
My next plan is to launch weekly or monthly community newspapers in Vegas. And that's something that I actually have a lot of experience doing, because my time at the Review-Journal, back in the late 1990s, I actually started their community newspapers for them. They were called View newspapers.
Yeah.
And I started those for the Review-Journal. We started with 3 monthlies. within 3 years, we were doing 17, actually 24 newspapers a week. I started with staff of 3. I had a staff of 14. It just grew. It was very, they were very popular. And they were very effective on an advertising side. So those don't exist anymore. So, and there aren't any newsprint community papers in Nevada. So, I mean, in Vegas for sure. So that's my next plan, I'm starting that. I'm just starting the sales effort. I have kind of my idea of how they wanted to look. I have the area that I want to go into first, and I have my media kit all set up, and I'm ready to go out and get it sold. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I know the community does definitely need something like that, right? And with the way that times change and evolved, it's an interesting thing that you found, right? Like in Mesquite, it is a retirement community. It's only 45 minutes north of Las Vegas, right? So in that little community, you're gonna know that people are still old school. They still want to read something, and you found something that the public wanted, and you were able to deliver, which is very inspiring. Because the business spotlight, Kurt, it's meant to inspire and educate people who are thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, right, or becoming a business owner. So since you started the business, what's been your biggest learning curve?
Well, my biggest learning curve obviously was just getting the structure of the business entity, because I hadn't personally done that. I had my magazine that I had in Arizona that I ran, as a part owner in, but I had other people that created the LLC and created the bank account and do all of those types of things.
Yeah.
I can create a newspaper, I can create a magazine. But it took me a little bit, I actually wasn't really that hard, but it was something that I needed to, to figure out. And there were certain parts of it that were like, well, geez, do I need to do it this way or do I do it that way? And I found that SCORE helped a little bit in terms of helping, kind of guiding me. There was a business development type group in Mesquite that I was able to contact, and they were able to kind of walk me through some of the process of starting an LLC and starting a bank account and and getting my QuickBooks all set up and actually setting up a bank account. I needed there was all kinds of different ways you have to set up a business bank account other than just a personal one. So those types of things were they weren't hard to do, but they were things that I needed to figure out.
It's definitely a learning curve, and that's really, really valuable information. As business coaches, Kirk, we work with smart and talented people who are great at what they do, right? Whether they're a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, an engineer, they're again at what they do, extremely talented. But then there's so many other levels of business that you do have to learn, right? Like you talked about, how do I should it be an LLC? Should it be a C corp, S corp? So there's so many different levels. Then it's, hey, what type of bank account should I set up? How many bank accounts should I have? Right. So it's little things like that, as coaches, where we come in to mentor and guide them through those steps to be successful at the end of the day. If you really think about, like, even some of the most difficult things that we've learned, those things came from us growing up, right? Like our parents taught us fundamentals of learning how to walk, crawl, run, right? Then we had mentors when we got into the education system. So they taught us the little things that we needed to start creating success or run it in a direct direction towards, getting a job, or, hey, what's next, right? But if you really, really think about it, we've always had somebody to guide us through that step, or those steps, right? Now, now that we are, you're in business, right? What do you feel is one of the first, or not first, but what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes first-time entrepreneurs make?
Ooh, well, that's a tough one because my business so far is pretty small. So I don't know that I made any any major mistakes because I knew what I was doing. I
Right.
think that's probably the biggest thing is I knew what I knew that what I was going to be able to put out there was going to be pretty good.
Mhm.
And I also knew that I could sell it and I knew that I could make money off of it. And I have, so I don't know that there's any, I think, maybe the one thing is maybe not trusting a little bit, maybe that some people are going to pay you because there's been a little bit of every now and then with, I'll get the ad and then I'll
Yep.
put it in the paper and then, I never hear from this person again. So,
Mhm.
so that they've left, I've had a few people that have kind of left me without payment for services rendered. And maybe I should be a little more aggressive in some of that. I don't have a lot of this. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of it's not a recurring issue that's costing me thousands of dollars, but there's certain people that maybe I trusted a little bit too much, and maybe I should have gotten some advance payments up front on. I
Yeah,
think that
and that's very valuable, right? Right there, right? That is gold for a lot of first-time entrepreneurs. Because look, we work with all kinds of different levels of business owners, and especially when it's service-based, product-based, right? There's two different types of business. Is how do I charge? And it's not, and it's having that system and that process of, hey, here's what the process looks like, right? And that information that you just shared is key because a lot of first time entrepreneurs struggle with, should I charge up front? Should I not? Should I wait until the product's delivered or the service is delivered? And I think that is one of the key things that they struggle with. And it's identifying, hey, knowing that, hey, going into this, here's what it looks like. So we're going to charge up front a percentage. And then once it's done, here's the rest of it. And we'll invoice you the rest, right? So it really depends on the business owner and the type of business. But like you said, right, not being more direct and saying, hey, we need to collect payment up front. And
Mhm.
that will ease a few, the speed bumps down the line.
Mhm.
What's your favorite part, Kirk, about being an entrepreneur?
Not having to answer to anybody basically as a boss. I've had honestly I've had good bosses,
Yeah.
and for the most part, I've had the bosses that I've had, especially my last company. Um, they were outstanding bosses, and but I think that a the work I put into I get the compensation for, and not somebody else. I think that that's probably maybe the best thing about it is that I know if I work X amount, I can make this amount, but if I work more, that difference goes to me. It
Mhm.
doesn't go to somebody else. So
Right.
I think that there's and that's part that's the huge plus side of being of an entrepreneur or business owner.
Hmm.
Um, the other side is you have there's risk involved, but um, if you don't work hard, then you're not going to make anything. So that's there's always that. Um, but I think that being an entrepreneur is much better than not being one in the
Yeah.
final. If you want to put in the work and if you have if you're able to produce a good product.
Right. Right. And if you think about during COVID, people got an early taste of retirement, right? We
Hmm.
were getting an allotment, and people didn't have to go to work, and I think that as bad as it was for a lot of people, it did inspire a lot of people to say, hey, I can actually do something. This is my opportunity. It's either now or never. And
Hmm.
we've helped scale so many businesses through that, through the coaching program. So leads to my next question, Kirk, what advice would you give 20-year-old Kirk who's just getting into business?
Oh, I would say maybe 20-year-old Kirk didn't have the experience level that I needed to actually start my own business. So I think that you probably need to work somewhere for a while and and gain the experience and knowledge to be able to go out and do your own thing
Mhm.
before you go out and do your own thing. I guess it depends. Like my son, he is in his early 20s, and this is interesting. He um, was working for a company. He does audio visual engineering for conventions. So he sets up, LED displays and everything. And his boss kind of recommended, said, you know what, you need to go out on your own and do this on your own. You can make a lot more money this way. And so he did that. And so he's actually out there, and he's his own boss now, and he's traveling the country, going to conventions and setting up, these engineering displays, and he's very good at his job. So he's in high demand. But but again, he still needed probably about a year's worth of working for a company, before he gained that, A, the connections, and B, the knowledge on how to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, but he did do that, but once he got that knowledge and connections, he did it. So maybe that's the other thing for 20-year-old Kirk would be to say, hey, you know what, go figure out, what you want to do and how to do it and who to do it for, and make that jump earlier.
Mhm.
You can make that jump, once you get that part figured out. So,
Right.
but I guess that would be but again, you still need to, develop your skill and connections, especially the connections. I think those are really big, because he was able to go off on his own, and was able to call people, to get jobs, including his old boss, by the way.
Mm.
And they knew who he was, and they said, oh yeah, you're good, we'll take, you can work for us. So, so for him, it's been a big win, um, as a 24-year-old kid, you know.
And that's, there's a few really good takeaways that you gave in there, right? One is that his own boss pushed
Hmm.
him, said, hey, you're great at this, you can do this. We
Hmm.
need leaders like that to empower other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm pretty sure in that is now a mentor of his, that he can easily pick up the phone and say, hey, here's what I'm facing, how did you face it?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And anything we do in business, it's really, really important. And you said it yourself. We have relationships, connections, right? And those connections and relationships, if you maintain them, they can open some pretty big doors, because you can't do it alone. And it's having those mentors, having those connections, relationships, to push us beyond, some of the barriers that are very challenging. Now, as we're at the tail end of COVID, and finishing with COVID, along this entrepreneurship journey for yourself, Kirk, what have you personally learned about yourself?
But I think I've learned that I don't need to work for a company
Mm-hmm.
anymore. I can do this, and I can go out and start, this business and expand it even
Yeah.
more on my own. Although that's another thing I was going to ask you about, and I guess another thing that I will need to learn. Okay, I have my I have a one man operation here.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of contractors that that do some graphic design and some other things. Very minimal. But I want to start 30 newspapers in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm not going to be able to do that by myself. I'm going to have to scale up. I'm going to have to add staff, like full-time staff at some point. Maybe, I'm not going to start 30 newspapers in one day, but I know that I'm going to do that, maybe in the next 2 years or so, hopefully. I'll start with 3 or 4 that I want to start, fairly soon. And then once I get those up and healthy, then I want to start, 4 more, and then another 4, in different parts of town. So I need to know, the one thing that I know that I need to know is what my company is going to look like in 6 months when I actually have staff. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have employees. But I know, I will need, I'm going to see, I'm going to need a salesperson, maybe a salesperson or two. I'm going to need an editor at some point because, I won't be able to personally do that anymore. Might need another layout artist, which is what I mean. Right now, my one publication that I have, I write most of it, I lay it out, I sell the ads. The only thing that I have anybody do is, like I said, I have a freelance graphic artist that handles my advertising.
Yes.
So, and that's it. So I know, and once I get, you know, 4 more papers down the road, I can't do that by myself. So, I will need to expand and have actual staff to do things. And that's something that I'm going to need a lot of help in figuring out at some point. So,
Yeah. Now, and that's something definitely we can take a look at down the road, right? One thing I did want to ask, before we wrap up today's business spotlight, if people are looking to work with you in helping you with this journey, right? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
LinkedIn is always good. My personal email is on there. I don't have really anything hidden. My personal phone number is on there. Again, my business phone number and my email are the same as my personal email and my personal phone number. I answer my own phone, and I answer my own emails. So those, if you want me to throw them out there, 775-316-2335 or bbm.kirk@gmail.com. Those are ways to reach me.
Well, Kirk, one final question. What's one question that I did not ask that you wish I did ask?
Where I want to start my new newspapers initially, and what they're called.
Yeah.
And now my new newspapers, initially, well, the umbrella of newspapers, it will be called the 215 News, which is kind of based off of the Beltway, because all of the areas that I want to focus on, kind of are along the Beltway. So initially, I will do 215 News Mountains Edge, 215 News Rhodes Ranch, 215 News Southern Highlands, and 215 News Nevada Trail. Each of those will have about 4,000 distribution, and they will be direct mail distribution. Wow. Which is very powerful. Print newspaper, probably either 16 to 20 pages or so, depending on the amount of advertising that I do get. Very affordable. Rates probably run between like $125, maybe up to about $500 or so for a full page. For 4,000 distribution, $500 is for that level of exposure is actually fairly inexpensive.
Yeah.
So that's my initial start. I actually have the 215 Southwest website. I've had that for a while, which will accompany those papers. I have a couple other websites as well. So when I expand into Summerlin, I'll have, various titles in Summerlin, which I have to determine. And then in Green Valley as well, and maybe the other parts of along the 215 Silverado Ranch, and then maybe all the way down into Centennial and Aliante and all of that. So eventually, like I said, I will have, hopefully 20 to 30 new newspapers, all going out on a monthly basis, within all these communities, direct mail. So those are all, that's what's next in store for me, and again, like I said, once I get to 20 or 30 other newspapers, then, I will be needing to expand, my staff and the whole business will need to change at some point. So
Yeah, so it looks like you got a solid plan in place, Kirk. We want to thank you for being on this episode of the Business
Mhm.
Spotlight. And I hope the viewers got a lot of good takeaways because you shared some really valuable information. I know I got a few takeaways out of this. So, Kirk,
Mhm.
thank you again for being on this episode, and I look forward to connecting with you and working with you in the future.
Great. Sounds good.